One of the things that I just thought about that I haven't really thought about in a while, not in this way. Well, I don't know if I've ever really thought about it completely this way, but I was writing and I was writing about the Bible, mainly Genesis, about Adam and Eve, and mainly Eve, because I noticed that most church sermons that spoke about Eve really spoke about her and speak about her in a negative light, whether it's men or women. And for me, I just kept thinking to myself, like, how do we talk so lowly about the Mother Earth, the first woman to ever do it? And really, there's no comparison when we consider that storyline and consider the fact that she had to continue after every mistake. She had to learn on her own. After every situation, she had to overcome um, all adversity and had nothing to go by. She couldn't say, I learned this because I watched this or I watched that. And there may have been certain things from the animals that, she could piggyback on as far as nursing or something and be like, oh, I see this happens. But no, she had to figure all of those things out and be instructed and guided. And the message that was given to me was like, yeah, continue to write and continue to share your story. So I was writing and I was writing about the Bible and the overview of it supposedly looking like Ye and I in the garden. And when I think about it, he made mention of this. Now, the thing about it is, though, he was already well versed. So, the things that I didn't know about the Bible, the things that I've never learned about the Bible, the things that I've never studied or never spent time meditating on, were things that he already knew, like the idea of Adam and Eve and who the real serpent was, the idea of what the, real description of the apple is, the idea that I was going to be betrayed and destroyed. So all of this was kind of in the plan, and I was just like, oh, okay, all right, let me, go along with it, and not knowing that I was being attacked and monitored and processed. And it blows my mind every day because I'm going to be honest. And one thing I said with recording was that I'm going to be honest. I fight every day with the idea that not just a man, but a black man was in participation of manipulating me in this way, because not only that was it that it wasn't like I was somebody that followed him or followed other celebrities or watched any of their talk shows, any of their live shows, their reality shows, any of that. I stopped going to concerts and stuff a long time ago. I took my daughters to a concert to see Tori Kelly, and I was pleased with that. And other than that, Lauryn Hill, I've gone to see, and I've gone to see like underground people, but none of those mega shows, because they've changed over the years, and I just didn't feel it was necessarily the best place for me, and didn't really have the interest for it. So the connection, or what would have brought attention to the entertainment world of me, would have been my organization. It would have been the fact that I turned away Republicans that were reaching out to me, or that I wrote a blog for Kanye West and was praying for him. So under those guises, I continue to struggle with, like, how the heck could me saying a prayer? Because in my writing and writing a blog, I never wrote blogs about um, any of the entertainers. I wrote about the events I was having. I wrote about people in the neighborhood. And I wrote one time about a young man in California that killed several people in an accident. And they called it oh my gosh, I can't think of the word right now, but basically because he was a privileged child, he kind of got away with a lot of murder and abuse. And other than that, though, I I uh, I stayed away from that. So other than these prayers, I've been struggling, and this is every day. So there is a part of me that continues to say, I really pray to find out the full underlying story. And from the angle I was looking at it today was like, so in this story is like Adam, Eve, and then God. And then I imagine that since what has been given to me and what I've been seeing as Elon is that he chose to play the role of God. And it's just a heavy weight. I went on Twitter today for a second. Sometimes I did not take it off my phone because I still have some accounts on there. But the thing about it is, he actually shares these posts and they make my skin crawl, because it's like, to know that you are abusing and taking advantage of people, but then still posting like this false image of who you are. And when I say that, it's like I'm faced with so many things, because I don't know the levels of evil that I'm dealing with. I know they're very heavy. I don't know the process of how many people or how long. And I know that I've been going through issues back to back. Now, a part of it now is that for the last several months, I've been kind of stuck in a whirlwind myself, in this cycle. Not just the last few months I'm feeling, but it's really been since 2021. Since 2021, when this was introduced to me, it changed the whole trajectory of my life and my direction. So my organization that I was building and that I was working on, I put that on pause for what I thought was the greater goal of building a partnered organization. I had always wanted that. And so I really believed in it, and not just for me, but for my children, my youngest two, especially. And then I figured at some point my middle child, Kevin, would come around, because throughout the years we used to have these conversations. And when you have peer pressure and influence from your older siblings, it can be really toxic. And I say that because my older sister, who is the oldest of all of my siblings, is someone I don't communicate with at all. If I see her, I'll speak or whatever, but I really have kept my distance. And she has always been that toxic sister, but I've had to separate myself and know the difference. If I went by what she said as far as feelings she had for my mother or other people, it would be something crazy, even when it comes down to myself. But I find that some people are not able to draw the line. And even where things are concerned now, my brother and I differ on several things, but on some things we have similar viewpoints, especially when it comes to childhood trauma that we both experience, and the idea of forgiveness and growth and moving forward. And that's where I was. And I had so many dreams that I was developing, and I was watching them, and I was doing it by myself, and literally separation from that hustle and bustle of constantly being a mother of so many children. I was parenting two, but finally I was down to two, and it was a blessing that I feel has been stolen to me. I pray to God. Y'all don't understand. I pray to God that Elon Musk and whoever else this team is are brought out. I may even start coming on live and just trying to pray more and and sharing more words and trying to find that place of encouragement. I thought my time was running out because I'm usually recording on TikTok, and this time I'm recording on a camera so I can actually go a little bit longer and then just split it up. But yeah, I really feel in my heart that it is going to be aired out. I have actually filed lawsuits, and I'm about to go out here and get this car today. Yo, I am literally like drowning, and now it's like I'm in a circle almost of self-sabotage, because to find out that your most private moments have been invaded, to find out that somebody is in your mind and in your head is so dirty. I remember a day I was on Twitter, which is now X or whatever, and I was writing, and I'm telling you how the interaction is with the online, but where it had to be someone who practiced me and followed me. That's why when this man pays, I feel like he needs to pay me as an ex-husband, like really, because he talks about the hours that he works. A lot of those hours are in stalking, and I know when it comes to me, he has studied, he has concentrated, he has practiced, and he has learned the certain things to say and do to communicate with me to get a certain response. So in the meantime, I'm getting certain information from him. I'm getting certain information from Ye, and I was more than double teamed. And right now, just take my story as a mystery, because I know that there are several of you that follow and are actually watching my videos, even though you don't comment, and I don't mind that. I'm glad that you're paying attention, and it gives me more confidence to be honest, and be honest about the mistakes I've made, be honest about where I fell short, and be honest about how I trusted without an extreme level of confidence. No, I'm sorry, an extreme level of common sense. I had the confidence, but I believe sometimes extreme faith and confidence can lead to lack of common sense and wind up hurting you. It's just like yesterday, I kept feeling like get up and go out, and I was led to go to this park that I wanted to host an event there, and 2021, before all this drama started happening. Then I said I was going to plan it in 2022, and here it is 2024, and I haven't done it because of the trauma. And before I go on with this story about the park, well, no, I'm going to finish this, then I'll go back to what I was saying about me being on X. So when I kept feeling the leading to go out, and I didn't. It was so hard for me to get up the energy, to get up the desire to leave out this apartment. And so today I went through that same thing. And right before 4 o'clock, I have these lawsuits that I have to get a proof of service for, and I have to send the letters off myself and get the proper documentation. And some of them I can get the, what do you call it? To send the sheriffs to send, but some of my letters came back because the addresses are no longer there. And when I went through that process, I was like, let me go do this today because it's Friday. I don't want to wait till Monday. I want to do it today. I could not get out of this door. I even got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm going to take a bird bath, wash my face. I don't even think I put moisturizer on it, just being honest. And I was like, I'm going to go. I went outside and the car was gone. So dig this. I now have my own car towed, and then the rental car that I got to help me while I'm trying to recover my own car got towed by the apartment complex in my parking space. And I have to go pick that up in a few minutes. And honestly, me not being responsible, because I'm devastated every day that I've gone through this. But going back to when I was on Twitter and I was writing, and I felt so free and I felt so amazing. I was writing poetry, But I was writing about intimacy, and I was writing about intimacy with God. It wasn't perverted, it wasn't nasty, it wasn't talking about, it wasn't explicit language or anything. And I worded in ways, I believe it may even still be on there if I didn't. Sometimes when I get really nervous, I'll delete it and then feel bad later that I deleted it, because a lot of times what I imagine after I've written or said it was so bad, after I go back and listen to it, I'm like, that, I like the way it sounded and I like the message it delivered. But I was sharing a message of freedom from abuse, freedom from SA, freedom from childhood trauma, and how I believe that it was found through a relationship with God, and how I believe that my ability to explore intimacy for myself as a teenager was stolen, and how there is a natural process that a lot of young, especially African American women, but it's not just for us, because you hear so many other women, but I'm sure that that is one of the reasons why a lot of us develop a lot sooner than many young ladies our same age. And there have been studies with reference to this. And I've said it before, I was like 8, 9 years old when I first developed breast. And younger than that when I was first assaulted. So when it comes down to it, I have always had this shield and this block in my heart about intimacy somewhat being not a place of freedom, but a place of bondage. Now, mind you, I was able to get free if I was with a person that I could feel free with, but I still had those boundaries up on myself about even experiencing, expressing, and fully loving my own body, my own self, being familiar with who I am. And the idea of the Bashan word to me was always so taboo. I never wanted to really indulge in it because one, I mean, I still don't, but I'm just saying, but even to have that natural curiosity as a child and try to learn me for myself, I didn't. And I felt like this communication, there was a pureness of conversation that I would have that I thought that I was having with just God. And a lot of times it was during praise and worship. So my phone was there. So I was saying some things that were in some ways even explicit, just being honest, but just saying to God, like, this is who I am, this is how I feel, but this is what these experiences in life have taken away from me. But I feel that I would have, in telling God how I felt, I would have been whole if I had the ability to wait and not be intimate until marriage, to grow in intimacy with God. If I was taught about God differently as a child, if the training was different as a child, and if he was introduced to me as more of a friend than just that fair perspective, it would have brought a different person out of me. So I'm sharing these things, I'm verbalizing them, I'm speaking them out loud because I'm in my own private space thinking it's just God and I. Once Elon started invading my space and shutting stuff down and basically doing things in a way that is like I was literally on punishment, being disciplined, spanked and fathered, it was devastating. That's not the word though. I don't think there's a word to describe what I went through. I winded up all of those nightmares and dreams of being essayed and abused came in flooding, and all I could remember was like, oh my gosh, all of these things that were personal and private to me were not personal and private. They were shared with him and whoever else was there to listen. Whoever else was watching and participating. There was even certain stuff that I was sharing on my private IG page, and I kept saying where it was showing like it looked like there were views, and what I was saying to myself was, oh, it must replay the views, like if I hit the video or something like that. Until I got this message one day that was like, group viewing is over or something like that. Those may not be the exact words, but when I got that message saying that the group viewing was gone, then my view count stayed at 0. It never changed anymore. And I was beyond devastated, because it was like, how dare somebody feel like they have the right to invade my privacy that way? And I have been working on trying to host an event for other people that have been affected by MK Ultra, other people that have been invaded in this way. And I hear people talking, but a lot of these details of what they have done, I don't hear those stories about how it's affected them and how they've fallen short. They say that they've been attacked, but I don't really hear the details, and that's why I want to be candid and be honest with what I've experienced. And some of it is really personal, and it is embarrassing. I was so happy so many times about the visions and dreams I was having, and seeing my son and my daughter, and actually seeing my son interact, and this is how detailed these dreams were, interact with other kids, and seeing my daughter literally interacting with North and working together on arts and crafts and stuff like that, and seeing a pure relationship that I knew I didn't dream up and I didn't create on my own. Even if I had the inkling that I was looking at him a certain way, or I was like, oh, this would be nice, or I considered it, or even if I was that person, it would be easier for me to accept in that way. But another thing I must also state is that I also have some neurodivergent characteristics, as I am on, never diagnosed, but I have some autistic characteristics. One of the things, when it came back to me a few years ago, I was just like, oh, I didn't deny, like I've always questioned, like, what is the basis of my weirdness, or a lot of it, and didn't have an answer for it. However, when I was reading this documentation when my son was first not diagnosed, but I guess it was a diagnosis, but it wasn't a tested diagnosis, when he was younger, that he had autism. I started reading everything about autism, and then I got freaked out, because I was like, everything I'm reading, most of it is describing me. I was like, I don't like, he ain't got that, they lying. And I never went back to it. I just prayed it away. And every conversation I had, I worked with him, worked to get him the help that he needed, and he continued to grow and advance and continued to speak and get stronger with his verbiage, and he created his own sign language. I knew my son was like smart as ever. He just was nonverbal. And for me, when it came to me like it was a revelation, like, you have some autistic characteristics. And I was like, oh, all right. I know, but not realizing that that's also part of the reason I was selected, because I have certain meltdowns. I have certain struggles. So where I may be wise in certain areas and very intellectual over here, I might struggle with maturity over here. And so it's like, for somebody else, they might be able to say, like, okay, even if you are right, switch, don't do this what you're doing, do this until and adjust. But for a person that transition comes hard, and if you've ever heard of a person that has a routine every day, and if you do something different, it just throws them off, they can't think, they're frustrated. In a lot of ways, not on a daily process, but when it's something long term, I can take hit after hit, and then I might come to a point where I crash. And what happened in this situation is every time I crashed, when I got back up, somebody was right there to make me crash again. And then I'm sitting there trying to figure out, like, what did I do wrong to deserve that? Why am I being tormented online? And the only way to really get myself back out there in the world after shutting down my organizations and stuff, and moving and being somewhere else, was to build relationships, was to start communication, was to use social media. So that's what I was doing. And where was I being interfered with? On social media. So on that day that I was on X and I was sharing these messages, interference kept coming up in my newsfeed, and it was like communication. And this is before I realized that I was being tracked and monitored the way that I was. So some of the things that I was saying in private were being shared, and I was disgusted. And then there even came a time, I never said this and I never shared it with my daughter, but I remember looking at her and noticing her figure changing and her becoming more curvy than she had been. And I never verbalized it, said anything about it. But right after I had those thoughts or whatever, then the next thing you know, I'm getting messages about curvy women. And it's like, I do know that some of it is AI, but I also know who was behind it. There was also several things that he was doing as far as changing logos and putting certain messages where I would see him, certain alerts where I would see him specifically. And to tell somebody that, or even to hear it from somebody, it's like, all right, you tripping. The only reason, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons I believe it when I hear other people say it is because I've been through it. To not go through it is like, okay, you tripping, the phone doesn't work that way, or what have you, the phone, it's algorithms and this, that, and the other. Because I've had that conversation, and I had that conversation with my sister, and proving to her why what she saw and what she was saying did not add up. And at the same time, when I was going through it, I did consider all of those things. So I kept denying it and being like, all right, I'm going to just ignore it and not say anything. So he continued to do stuff basically to be like, I'm going to get a response out of you eventually. And eventually he did. And today, I don't really know what the goal is, except that if I'm going to be completely transparent about what I feel that Elon has been a person to demand what he wants and basically get what he wants. And I believe that when he came across me and was able to stalk me and find out the things that I was doing in my own private time and go through my notes and my writing and stuff like that, that he decided that I would share stories about him. I feel that there is a sense of gratification that he gets from having the power that he has. But I also feel that somewhere people not knowing about all that he's doing and capable of doing, like many other people that do psychotic things or have certain levels of, I was going to say, well, when you get to a certain level of celebrity or finance, they call it eccentric. But I call it evil because he's using his power in a way to destroy. And there is some type of method that he has to his madness. And there are certain things that I recognize. Like, I have to admit there are certain things that I have learned. I don't feel like they've made me a better person. They've made me doubt myself. They've made me distrust myself. They've made me look at boundaries and boundary setting in a whole different light. I feel like I'm on this earth with no one I can trust, and to the point where I still have hope that somewhere, when the explanation, when I get it, however long it's going to take, and prayerfully before I leave this earth, of the role that Kanye played in it, that he's not just a complete villain. Because I do know that you have puppets and you have puppet masters. I do know that throughout this journey, there were videos that he put up, but I was getting totally different messages from him. There was a video a couple years ago, or a year ago at least, I don't know, that Ye shared about him being a puppet and running to the finish line. It was messages that he shared about being programmed. But because of the way it was shared in art, I didn't receive the message as face value. And I also feel that as a collective, the way they send these subliminal messages in movies, they do it so it's like, yeah, well, I told you, but no, you didn't tell me. Those hints, I didn't catch on. I didn't have the capacity to understand that I was in a real war. Oh, and that's one of the videos too. He labeled war. And I was like, okay, I get it. We are at war. We are fighting a war. But the war that I saw was based on the assaults that I had already been through. It was over the trial that I had been through with my ex husband as well, and the abuse that I endured on and off for years that I really kept quiet about. When I was pregnant with my son and he stomped the crap out of me in my apartment, I should have called the cops immediately and had him charged. I didn't, and my children witnessed this. And even when we talked about it later, after it all happened and I was crying, I went out in the hallway, and when I walked back down the hallway, after he left and he was going down the steps, I went behind him and I screamed at him and I called him a name. I think it was an a-hole. And so years later, the conversation came up, and my two oldest sons were describing what happened, and they were talking about the fact that I was cussing at him, their father, on this day that he beat me up. And I was like, I used to argue with him, but I didn't cuss at him. I was like, that was one of the things that I was proud that did not occur. So then they were like, well, no, after he beat you up, you went, behind him and you said you were screaming down the steps. And I'm like, yeah, because after that point, he's kicked my ass. So yes, I wasn't asking to be beat up again, but I was hurt. I was in shock. I was abused. I was scared. But what it told me with the way that they responded was the way they viewed what happened that day was hella scary. They didn't view it in a way that this is what happened to my mom and this was crazy wrong. What they did was pull out the part of where I was wrong in what happened. And I didn't, and even though I was telling them, why or whatever, it was looked at as I was making an excuse for my part in it. And I'm like, dang, and this is what I see in the media. So honestly, it's why I've blocked myself off from it and in social media for so long. And I've been forced to watch it in the worst kind of way, because so many victims, that is the answer. I when you hear them respond, they're like, oh, well, I've been at a lot, I've been around them on a lot of good times. I just saw something where Iyanla Vanzant was telling Nick, well, you just say, well, I don't want to respond as far as that, because on my brother, because he stood by me before. Wrong is wrong, even if it's your brother, if it's your mother, if it's your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, your child. Wrong is wrong. And yes, when it is family, you do have a place in your heart that says something different, but you don't stand by and watch somebody abuse somebody and then just say, I'm not going to speak on it because they did stuff that was nice to me before. That is so crazy. I had nightmares, literally, and blamed myself for many years because a young lady that was the child of a friend of my family, we were about the same age, maybe like 11 years old, and I was SA'd by her stepfather. He put his hands in my shirt when he came over for a cookout. I had just experienced something similar. No, I wasn't even, was I 11? I think I was 10. I had just experienced something similar from my, I guess it would have been my step grandmother, because my stepfather's mom. And when I told my mom what she did, that didn't go over too well. So when he did the same thing to me and was playing in my shirt, I looked at him and I was like, ah! And then I ran outside, and I never said anything to anybody. So a while later, when I found out that he was on the run because they found out he was molesting his stepdaughter, I blamed myself, because I was like, maybe if I would have told that, then maybe they would have stopped it before, not knowing that it was going on for a long time. But I felt like I could have helped, and I didn't do anything to help. And I held that in for years and years until I became an adult. And I believe I told my mother, I was like, I never told you this happened, but I lived with it. And I told her, why I didn't tell her. And that's the thing. We don't have enough information shared about combating this. So that's what I was working on. And that's why I was so drawn in, because to be working on a process, writing books, writing programs to help women and children that have been abused in this way, help them heal, recover, and begin to love themselves again, and not feel dirty, not feel violated, not want to really look at themselves and not be able to see themselves for who they were because their innocence was stolen. To be doing that and then be told that somebody is going to help you do it and it be divine. Oh, I was all in. There was nothing. And not only that, it was also mentioned like this is going to be my upgrade. So it took me back to some childhood things. That song, To the Left, to the Left. I've been on and off with my ex-husband so many times, but one of the times I remember I was singing that song through the roof. I don't even think I know all the lyrics, but when that hook came on, everything you got. Like, only thing I used to switch the words. I'll find a better you in a minute. It wasn't another one, because I don't want another one. I want a better one. So it was like, what you've been hoping for is here. And with everything on my life, I believe that. And I put it on my life. I parted with so many things that meant so much to me, so many sentimental moments and memories, only to find out a lot of that stuff was invaded. And a lot of what re-traumatized me was a lot of that being shown to me once I realized that everything I wrote and I didn't share, because I used to try to tell some of what I was working on with people, and they just basically like, oh God, what you're doing is too much, too overwhelming. But I had my vision. I was like, I want to drop this way, and I know that it's possible. I can't do it myself, but I know that it could be done. And so I was like, to have the ability to stop evils, to have the ability to intercept um, some of the negatively and see my dream happen in fruition would be beautiful. And the idea of having additional children was scary, but at the same time, it was like a miracle in itself, and I was ready for it. I was getting fit at the time. I was like, look, and I'm thinner than I would like to be. I want my thickness back. I don't mind necessarily being a size, but I'm not fit. So I haven't been lifting anymore. My body is weak, like the energy. I was picturing myself turning up, like, I've always been a creative. So dancing, singing, praising, creating has always been my thing. And I was just like, to combine the two. And that's where my heart really was. So I'm not going to sit here and lie and pretend as if. The thing about it, though, it all turned perverted. So instead of me feeling like love story and feeling like help the world and help people grow, repair, and recover, I start feeling dirty. I start feeling like I can't I know how to spell a word, but a garden tool. Yo, my mind on freeze. I'm like, how you spell that word? But yeah, feeling like I started feeling like that because I started feeling like a thirst trap. I knew that wasn't the purpose, but I was like, to share this story, that's what it sounds like. I even had a time where, like, because I started telling my children the dreams that I saw, my two youngest, and telling them I didn't know when it was going to happen, but I knew that it was, and I'm sharing this story. And to the point where when it changed and it got so dark, I remember my daughter saying to me, like, you're hurt because basically, like, I don't remember her exact words, but basically, like, I fell in love with this celebrity and he wasn't interested in me, and now I'm crushed. And I was like, dang, that is how it looks. I look like a rose sucker. And I was like, no. I was like, things that I haven't said to you and that you're not aware of is I sacrificed a whole lot. So it wasn't about me having a dream that was crushed. It was me preparing me for something. I went from building this empire on my own to doing a complete about face and starting over and incorporating. When I tell you I went in and certain things that I was doing and thinking and visualizing were outlandish. Today I see it as, crazy. At the time I was like, it's a risk that I'm willing to take. At the time I was like, I just believed I was in communication with God. And I was like, God, there's no way God is going to steer me wrong. I was like, God has finally shined his light on me. He's finally answering my prayers. He's finally reaching out to me because of my commitment and my obedience. And even like I said, I think back to that day when I got stumped like that by him. This man had on Timberland boots. But I just remember, like, over the years, so many abusive scenarios where it's like, what was the real underlying reason? And that's why I am so against that down low in the sodomy stuff, because I believe if he was true to himself, he would be living the bi lifestyle that he wanted to. But I feel like I interfered with that. But not just interfered with it, I also played a good cover for him. And I interfered with his freedom to be free, because there was no way he could have shared with me that, hey, I want to have this open type lifestyle, and I would have been okay with it. I was not able to respect a man who was being penetrated as I am. I know the type of sounds that I make. So I can't imagine that for someone that I would consider my husband. And to be my husband and to be my leader, then I expect you to be stronger than me. And I already am a little bit rough around the edges in some ways. I feel like I'm feminine. I feel like I'm not as soft as I could be because I've had to fight my whole life. And having to fight all the time, it's like you don't really have an opportunity to be weak. And in these moments, I've been just that. I've been not just weak. I've been, drowning, trying to get out and feeling like, you know, just knowing that someone is watching, knowing that, certain things happen. So they know, like, and it is different for each individual. Like certain emails or messages or texts that would come through that would affect me a certain way, they're not going to affect you in the same way. But there are certain ones that will affect you, and they have to study you to learn what they are. And it's like this guy has all this time on his hands and the power and ability to do what he wants, and he does it. And I don't know if does it well would be the right word, but he does it strategically. I guess that's the word I want to use. And I just know that I've seen a lot of people share their stories and be overlooked, but I'm expecting real change, and I'm going to try to do what I can to dig myself up out of this hole and process these events and keep talking until my small voice becomes large, until my small presence becomes larger. I have a few people that I have not even called or let them know that I'm back online or anything like that because it's embarrassing. I went away and with the goal to build. I had so much money available, and when I say that, for some people it might not be a lot, but it was more money I had at one time than ever and had more coming in. I am actually aware I have access to more money right now, but I've been so stressed and overwhelmed, I haven't even really fought to get it, and I'm going to try to figure this out. And I have been, but also the court system is overwhelming, and I have the propensity to freeze when certain questions are asked and certain things are said, and especially when they're lies. Like I was saying the other day when I was in court, and Eric, that's my ex-husband, when he was on the phone and he was like, yeah, he was missing for a week and she didn't even call until after a week once she found out he was with me. And I'm like, what? I was on the phone that same day. The police were on the phone that same day talking to my mom. That's a whole lie. It wasn't a week. It was that same day. But I heard that, and then something else was said. So I responded to that, and I didn't respond to the statements that he said to really make me look horrible. And then he even mentioned the fact about, like my kids flocking to them after they get a certain age. And I'm like, yeah, but because he's paying for an apartment for them. He's not there. He's gone for weeks and months at a time. And then in addition, and wanting one of the kids to play as a parent so that they can have freedom, knowing that freedom brought a lot of sin and perversion into his life. But if he's responsible as a father, that means he would have to be accountable for himself, and he doesn't want to do that. So at the end of the day, it's just like so many things that my oldest son, the one he's talking about, was involved in. They have the communication. Oh, he was just doing, what every kid that age does. When it came to the conversation about the stuff that my son was watching and how it affected him. And yes, a lot of young people watch things they shouldn't, and it's in the palm of your hand a lot of times if you're on the phone, and there are not these limitations that are set up. And if the parent, like I didn't put these things into place, and you call yourself trusting your child when they've got freedom at the palm of their hand. But that was the conversations I'd get back, my older daughter. Every boy that's 15 years old, that's what they're doing. And it's like, when did that become the norm? There are no longer boundaries set to say, this is not okay. Even when we snuck and did certain stuff as kids, you know, it's like certain things, like an R-rated movie, didn't come on till a certain hour. Now it's at your hand and you're 2 years old. Well, that doesn't change the fact that my child was watching stuff with his father. He shouldn't have been at 2 years old. But I'm gonna I think I'm gonna leave this here and post all 5 of these.